The emergency entrance at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center had never been this silent. 5 military working dogs had arrived within 15 minutes of one another. Not barking, not growling, not resisting, just watching. Each one sat perfectly, still beside its transport kennel, their alert eyes scanning every movement around them as if they were still somewhere far from home. Veterinarians surrounded them. Military handlers spoke familiar commands. Behavior specialists tried everything they knew. Yet not a single dog would allow anyone close enough to begin a proper examination. 1 hour passed, then another. The hospital director finally looked across the crowded treatment wing and asked the question that left everyone strangely quiet. Who can reach them? A retired Army handler didn't hesitate. The quiet nurse. Another nodded. So can I. A third answered before the director could speak again. She's the only one they'll trust. The director frowned. What quiet nurse? The room fell silent. Then someone quietly answered. Olivia Bennett. Before we continue, have you ever judged someone before learning their real story, or been judged yourself without anyone knowing the truth? Tell us in the comments. We'd genuinely love to hear your experience. And if stories about military heroes and loyal canines inspire you, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one. Monday mornings were usually predictable inside Walter Reed's military working dog wing. The hospital specialized in treating retired and active duty military service animals from every branch of the United States Armed Forces. The staff had seen anxious dogs, aggressive dogs, exhausted dogs, dogs that refused food, dogs that searched every hallway for handlers who were still overseas. Nothing surprised them anymore, or at least that was what hospital director Richard Coleman believed. At 62, Coleman had spent nearly 4 decades managing military medical facilities. He believed every problem had a protocol, every emergency had procedures, every difficult patient eventually responded to experience. That confidence began disappearing shortly after 7:30 that morning. A convoy of military vehicles entered through the secured entrance. The first transport stopped, then another, then 3 more. Military police quietly secured the area while veterinary teams hurried outside. Captain Eric Dawson climbed from the lead vehicle. His uniform showed the dust of a long flight followed by an even longer drive. He removed his cap and greeted the staff with a tired smile. Morning. Dr. Hannah Foster stepped forward. 5 dogs? Captain Dawson nodded. They've all completed quarantine after returning from overseas. Medical concerns? Mostly exhaustion, dehydration, elevated stress, and refusal to eat. No serious injuries? He shook his head. Nothing life-threatening. The entire veterinary team visibly relaxed. That was good news, but Captain Dawson wasn't finished. They've lost trust. Everyone looked at him. What do you mean? Dr. Foster asked. They've been through months of constant operations. They're physically stable. But mentally, he glanced toward the transport vehicles. They're still waiting for orders that aren't coming. One by one, the kennel doors opened. The first dog stepped out, a large German shepherd with a silvered muzzle and calm amber eyes. His service tag identified him simply, Maverick. He stood perfectly still, watching, listening, calculating every movement around him. The second was a Belgian Malinois, lean, athletic, golden coat, bright, intelligent eyes. Kodiak, unlike Maverick, Kodiak constantly checked every doorway, every sound, every person. His training hadn't left him. It couldn't. The third dog hesitated before leaving the kennel. Another German shepherd, slightly younger. His ears lowered the moment strangers approached. Echo doctor. Foster noticed immediately. He isn't afraid. Captain Dawson nodded. He's grieving. Nobody asked another question. The fourth dog bounded halfway out before stopping himself. Energy remained. Confidence didn't. Scout, the youngest Malinois, shifted beside Captain Dawson, wanting instructions that never came. Finally came the fifth, the smallest German shepherd of the group. Barely 3 years old. Dark eyes. Quiet. Reserved. almost invisible beside the others. His tag read, Valor. He walked directly beside Maverick, close enough that his shoulder almost touched the older dog's, like a younger soldier following someone he trusted. No barking, no pulling, no excitement, only silence. Dr. Foster smiled gently. They're beautiful, Captain Dawson quietly answered. They used to smile more. The words stayed with everyone. Inside the treatment wing, preparations moved quickly. Comfort mats, fresh water, soft lighting, minimal noise. The hospital had learned years ago that military dogs often responded better in calm environments. For nearly 30 minutes, everything appeared encouraging. Then the examinations began, or rather, failed to begin. Maverick wouldn't move. Kodiak refused to enter the exam room. Echo sat facing the exit. Scout paced small circles without letting anyone near him. Valor quietly pressed himself against the wall. No aggression, no snapping, no barking, only distance. The specialists exchanged uncertain looks. This isn't fear, one veterinarian whispered. It's discipline, another nodded. They're waiting for permission. Captain Dawson sighed. They've spent years following handlers they trusted with their lives. And now? They don't know who's supposed to replace them. Hours passed. The dogs ignored treats. Ignored toys, ignored commands. Even familiar military phrases brought almost no reaction. Hospital Director Coleman watched from the observation window. This is unusual, Dr. Foster agreed. They're not refusing treatment. They're refusing people. Coleman folded his arms. I've never seen 5 dogs respond exactly the same way. Captain Dawson quietly smiled. They served together. They learned together. They survived together. And now they're healing together. By mid-morning, frustration had slowly begun spreading through the staff. Nobody blamed the dogs. Everyone simply wanted to help them. One behavioral specialist tried sitting quietly nearby. Another read aloud in a soft voice. A veterinary technician carefully placed bowls of fresh food several feet away before walking back. Nothing changed. Maverick watched everyone. Kodiak watched every doorway. Echo watched the floor. Scout watched Maverick. Valor watched Echo. 5 different personalities. One shared emotion, uncertainty. Hospital Director Coleman finally entered the treatment area himself. I've contacted specialists from Fort Belvoir. They'll arrive after lunch. Captain Dawson respectfully shook his head. I don't think more specialists are what they need. Coleman raised an eyebrow. What do they need? Captain Dawson hesitated, then answered honestly. Someone they don't have to fear disappointing. Those words puzzled almost everyone, except one elderly maintenance worker quietly replacing a ceiling light nearby. Mr. Lewis had worked in the hospital for nearly 20 years. He'd seen hundreds of military dogs come through these halls. He smiled faintly. They're waiting. Captain Dawson looked toward him. For what? Mr. Lewis finished tightening the light fixture. For someone who understands silence. No one understood what he meant, at least, not yet. About an hour later, while most of the staff remained focused on the treatment wing, another nurse quietly walked through the east entrance carrying 2 cups of coffee. She wore neatly pressed navy blue scrubs. Her dark chestnut hair was tied into a simple low ponytail. Her hospital badge identified her, Olivia Bennett, age 33, trauma nurse. She wasn't rushing. She never did. She greeted the receptionist by name, asked the overnight nurse how her son was recovering from surgery, smiled at a janitor she'd worked beside for years. She noticed people, always. Most people barely noticed her. Olivia quietly placed 1 coffee on another nurse's desk. You forgot breakfast again, the nurse laughed. I knew you'd know. Olivia shrugged. You always do on Mondays. Small conversations. Quiet kindness. Nothing dramatic. Nothing extraordinary. As she walked toward the trauma elevators, she heard unfamiliar sounds echoing from the military treatment wing. Not barking, not shouting, just silence. She glanced through the observation window. 5 pairs of watchful eyes met hers. For only a second. Then Maverick slowly stood. Dr. Foster noticed first. Wait. Everyone froze. Maverick hadn't moved in nearly 40 minutes. The old German shepherd wasn't looking at the veterinarians, or Captain Dawson, or Director Coleman. He was looking through the glass, straight at Olivia Bennett. She hadn't even realized the dogs could see her from the hallway. She gave a small, almost instinctive smile. Nothing more. No commands, no gestures, just a quiet smile. Something unexpected happened. Valor stood too. Then Echo. Scout stopped pacing. Even Kodiak slowly relaxed his posture. The room became completely still. Director Coleman looked around in confusion. What just happened? Nobody answered. Because nobody knew, except Captain Dawson. He had seen that look before. Years ago, on another military base. Different dogs. Different mission. Same nurse. He slowly turned toward the observation window. A smile spread across his tired face. So, he whispered, she finally found them. If this story is touching your heart so far, take a moment to hit the like button. It helps more people discover stories about the incredible bond between military working dogs and the people who dedicate their lives to caring for them. The treatment wing remained silent. No one moved, not because they had been told to, because they were afraid that even the smallest sound would break whatever had just happened. Behind the observation glass, Maverick stood calmly, his amber eyes fixed on Olivia Bennett. Then, one after another, the other 4 military dogs slowly rose to their feet. Not in alarm, not in defense, simply because she had appeared. Hospital Director Richard Coleman looked from the dogs to the woman standing in the hallway. Does anyone know her? Several nurses exchanged glances. Captain Eric Dawson smiled faintly. Oh, we know her. Dr. Hannah Foster looked surprised. I've worked with Olivia for almost 2 years. She's wonderful, but I've never seen her with military dogs. Captain Dawson nodded. That's because she never talks about it. Director Coleman frowned. What exactly doesn't she talk about? Before anyone could answer, Olivia realized everyone was staring at her. She looked embarrassed. Is everything okay? Dr. Foster opened the treatment room door. Olivia, could you come here for a moment? She stepped inside, unaware that nearly 20 pairs of eyes were following her. The moment she entered the room, something remarkable happened. Maverick took one slow step toward her. No one breathed. Kodiak watched carefully but remained relaxed. Echo lowered his head. Scout stopped scanning the room. Valor quietly sat beside Maverick. Olivia didn't approach them. She didn't kneel. She didn't call their names. Instead, she stood still, keeping her hands relaxed at her sides. Good morning, she said softly. Her voice was calm, gentle, almost conversational. I know today has been a long one. The 5 dogs simply watched her. No commands, no whistles, no treats, nothing except patience. Nearly a minute passed. Finally, Maverick walked forward, not quickly, not dramatically, one careful step at a time. Captain Dawson quietly whispered, He's making the choice himself. Director Coleman folded his arms. What choice? Whether he believes she's safe. When Maverick reached Olivia, he stopped just an arm's length away. She still didn't touch him. Instead, she lowered herself into a crouch, not directly in front of him, but slightly to the side, allowing him space. You've done enough, she whispered. You don't have to be on duty every second. The older German shepherd blinked slowly. Then, for the first time since arriving at the hospital, he lowered his head, not in submission, in relief. A collective breath escaped the room. Olivia gently rested one hand beneath his neck. There was no resistance, no hesitation, only trust. Dr. Foster quietly shook her head. I don't understand. Captain Dawson smiled. You don't have to. One by one, the others began moving. Echo approached next, stopping just behind Maverick. Scout cautiously followed. Kodiak remained watchful for another minute before walking over. Only Valor stayed near the wall. Olivia noticed immediately. She didn't call him. She simply looked toward him. "It's okay. No one's asking you to be brave today." Valor's ears lifted slightly. Then, after several long seconds, he crossed the room on his own. Director Coleman stared in disbelief. "They wouldn't let any of us near them," Captain Dawson answered quietly. "They're not responding to authority. They're responding to kindness." The examinations finally began, without restraints, without sedation, without force. Dr. Foster performed the first wellness check on Maverick while Olivia remained nearby. The German shepherd never looked away from her. Each time a veterinarian moved closer, Maverick briefly glanced toward Olivia. She would simply nod, as though silently saying, "It's all right." Only then would he relax again, the same pattern repeated with Kodiak, then Echo, then Scout. Finally, Valor. For the first time that day, every examination was completed successfully. Director Coleman couldn't take his eyes off Olivia. "Who taught you this?" She looked genuinely surprised. "Taught me what?" "Whatever you're doing." Olivia smiled modestly. "I'm not really doing anything." Captain Dawson laughed softly. "That's exactly what you're doing." She looked confused. He continued, "Everyone else is trying to convince them they're safe. You simply became someone who feels safe." Those words lingered in the room. An hour later, all 5 dogs had finally begun drinking water. Scout even accepted a small meal. The veterinary technicians couldn't stop smiling. "We've been trying all morning," Olivia shrugged. They were hungry. They just needed to know they had time. Director Coleman watched every interaction. He had spent decades studying leadership. Yet today, leadership looked nothing like he expected. No loud voice, no impressive title, no dramatic speeches, just a quiet nurse sitting on the floor beside 5 military dogs. As lunchtime approached, Olivia quietly stood. "I should probably get back to trauma." Before she could leave, Maverick stood as well. Then Echo, Scout, Kodiak, Valor. Every dog followed her to the door. The room erupted into quiet laughter. Dr. Foster smiled. "I think they made their decision." Olivia chuckled. "Oh no. You boys have your own doctors." She gently pointed toward Dr. Foster. "She's taking care of you today." Maverick looked at Dr. Foster, then back at Olivia. Captain Dawson laughed. "I think he respectfully disagrees." Even Director Coleman smiled. The tension that had filled the hospital all morning had almost completely disappeared. Later that afternoon, Director Coleman sat in his office reviewing Olivia's personnel file. The more he read, the quieter he became. 13 years of service, outstanding evaluations, multiple military commendations, letters from veterans, recommendations from military handlers, dozens of thank-you notes from families, yet there wasn't a single mention of awards on her office wall. No photographs celebrating achievements, no speeches, no interviews, just quiet excellence. There was one sentence that caught his attention. "Frequently requested by military working dog units for patient support and behavioral stabilization." He leaned back. "How did I miss this?" His assistant smiled knowingly, because she never wanted you to notice. Meanwhile, Olivia sat outside beneath a large oak tree during her lunch break. She ate a simple sandwich while reading a paperback novel. A peaceful half hour. Or so she thought. 5 minutes later, the hospital doors opened. Maverick walked outside, followed by Kodiak, Echo Scout, Valor. Behind them hurried 3 embarrassed veterinary technicians. "We're so sorry. They slipped past us." Olivia laughed. "I don't think they slipped." The dogs calmly walked across the lawn. Without hesitation, all 5 settled around Olivia in a loose circle. Maverick rested beside her left shoulder. Echo curled near her feet. Scout stretched comfortably in the grass. Kodiak sat facing the parking lot, still instinctively keeping watch. Valor quietly leaned against Olivia's knee. Hospital employees walking past stopped in amazement. One whispered, "Look at them." Another smiled. They finally look peaceful. Director Coleman happened to witness the scene from the second-floor window. He quietly asked Captain Dawson, "Have they done this before?" Captain Dawson nodded. "Many times. With Olivia, whenever she's around." Coleman looked puzzled. "But why?" Captain Dawson didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched Olivia gently scratching behind Maverick's ears. Finally, he spoke. "Because years ago, she made a promise." Director Coleman looked at him. "What promise?" Captain Dawson smiled. "I think it's time someone finally told you who Olivia Bennett really is. If you've ever believed that kindness can accomplish what force never could, leave A in the comments. Sometimes the strongest people are the quietest, and the ones who never ask for recognition." The question lingered in Director Richard Coleman's mind long after everyone else had returned to work. Years ago, she made a promise. He turned toward Captain Eric Dawson. "What promise?" Captain Dawson watched the 5 military dogs resting peacefully around Olivia beneath the oak tree. Then he smiled. "The kind you don't make with words." 23 years earlier, Olivia Bennett had been 10 years old. Her father, David Bennett, wasn't a veterinarian. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't even a soldier. He was one of the civilian trainers who worked alongside military canine units, preparing service dogs before deployment. To Olivia, weekends weren't spent in shopping malls or movie theaters. They were spent sitting quietly on training fields, watching dogs learn, watching handlers trust, watching partnerships that couldn't be explained with words. One afternoon, she asked her father something she'd never forgotten. "Dad, how do military dogs know who the good people are?" David smiled. "They don't," she frowned. "They choose who feels safe." He pointed toward a young German shepherd sitting beside a nervous handler. "See that dog? He isn't obeying because of commands. He's obeying because he trusts." Olivia watched carefully. "Can everyone earn that trust?" Her father nodded. "Eventually." "How?" David crouched beside her. "Most people try to lead a military dog. The special ones simply become someone worth following." Years later, those words still guided everything Olivia did. Back in the present, Director Coleman listened silently. "So she's worked with military dogs her entire life?" Captain Dawson nodded. "Not professionally. Personally. She understands something most people overlook." "What?" "They've spent their lives protecting everyone else. Sometimes they need someone who expects absolutely nothing from them." The rest of the afternoon brought another surprise. For the first time since arriving, Maverick carried a tennis ball toward Olivia, not to play, simply to place it beside her shoe. She looked down and smiled. "I suppose that's your way of saying hello?" Scout immediately wagged his tail. Echo relaxed enough to lie on his side. Kodiak finally stopped scanning every doorway. Even Valor stretched out and closed his eyes. Dr. Hannah Foster couldn't hide her amazement. "I've never seen emotional recovery happen this quickly." Olivia gently shook her head. "It isn't quick. It's been building for months." Everyone looked confused. She continued. "They've been carrying responsibility every day. The moment they realized someone else would carry it for a little while, they finally allowed themselves to rest." Those words filled the room with silence. That evening, Director Coleman made an unusual decision. Instead of returning to his office, he stayed in the treatment wing, not as director, simply as another observer. He watched Olivia help Dr. Foster prepare medications. She organized supplies, refilled water bowls, thanked every technician by name. When a young intern accidentally dropped a clipboard, Olivia quietly picked it up before anyone noticed. When another nurse struggled with paperwork, Olivia offered help without being asked. She never looked toward the cameras, never waited for praise, never acted as though any of it deserved recognition. Director Coleman realized something uncomfortable. He knew every department's statistics, every quarterly report, every budget. Yet he barely knew one of the most remarkable people in his own hospital. The following morning brought an unexpected challenge. The 5 dogs needed to walk through another wing of the hospital for additional evaluations. Several veterans receiving rehabilitation therapy happened to be nearby. One elderly Marine paused when he saw Maverick. His eyes became misty. He slowly removed his cap, without saying a word. Every veteran in the hallway quietly followed. Doctors stopped walking. Nurses paused their conversations. The hallway became completely still, not because of rank, not because of ceremony, because everyone understood what these dogs represented: years of loyalty, service, sacrifice. Olivia gently walked beside them, not leading, simply accompanying. Maverick walked closest to her. Scout happily looked around for the first time since arriving. Echo's ears finally stood upright. Valor stayed close to Olivia's side. Kodiak calmly observed the hallway without tension. As they passed the veterans, something extraordinary happened, one by one. The veterans smiled. Not big smiles, small ones, the kind that come from memories words cannot describe. One elderly Navy veteran quietly whispered, "They're finally home." Later that afternoon, Director Coleman called an all-staff meeting. Nobody knew why. Doctors, veterinarians, nurses, military handlers, maintenance workers, receptionists. Everyone gathered inside the hospital auditorium. Olivia quietly chose a seat near the back, just as she always did. Director Coleman stepped onto the stage. He looked across the room before speaking. "Yesterday morning, I asked a question." He smiled. "I asked, who saved the 5 military working dogs?" Several people glanced toward Olivia. Director Coleman continued, "I expected someone to name a department, or a specialist, or a veterinarian. Instead, every single person gave me the same answer." He looked directly toward the back row, the quiet nurse. Olivia immediately lowered her eyes. Clearly uncomfortable with the attention, Director Coleman smiled. "I've spent 40 years believing leadership comes from titles. Yesterday, I learned leadership can also come from kindness." The room became completely silent. He walked off the stage, not toward the front row, toward Olivia. She looked surprised. So was I. In front of everyone, Director Richard Coleman extended his hand. "Olivia Bennett." "Thank you." The applause began quietly. One veterinarian, then another. Soon the entire auditorium stood, not because anyone asked them to, because every person there knew exactly what they had witnessed. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. She accepted the handshake, then quietly said, "I didn't save them." The room became silent again. Director Coleman smiled. "No." She looked toward the 5 military dogs waiting patiently beside Captain Dawson. "They saved each other. I was just lucky enough to be there when they decided to trust again." Captain Dawson softly laughed. "That's exactly what I thought you'd say." A few weeks later, the military working dog wing felt different. Maverick had become the calm leader everyone expected. Kodiak greeted staff with quiet confidence. Echo no longer hesitated to enter treatment rooms. Scout somehow convinced nearly every employee to play fetch during lunch breaks. Valor discovered that he loved sitting beside the hospital garden fountain every afternoon. The dogs were healing. Not just physically, emotionally. Visitors often asked the same question. How did all 5 recover so well? The answer never changed. Staff members would smile, look toward the nurse's station, and quietly reply, "The quiet nurse." One autumn afternoon, Captain Dawson prepared to leave with the dogs for their next assignment. Not another deployment, a military rehabilitation and retirement program where the 5 friends would remain together. Before loading into the transport vehicle, Maverick suddenly stopped. He turned around, walked back across the parking lot, straight to Olivia. Without hesitation, he gently rested his head against her shoulder. The other 4 dogs followed, one after another. No commands, no training, just gratitude. Olivia knelt, wrapping one arm around Maverick while gently stroking each of the others. "You boys take care of each other. Captain Dawson smiled. "We will." She laughed softly. "I wasn't talking to you." Everyone nearby laughed, because they knew exactly what she meant. The 5 dogs climbed into the vehicle together. Maverick sat nearest the rear window, as the convoy slowly pulled away. 5 familiar faces looked back toward the hospital, toward the quiet nurse who had never asked for recognition, only the chance to help. Several months later, Director Coleman walked through the hospital lobby and noticed something new mounted on one of the walls. It wasn't large, it wasn't flashy, just a simple bronze plaque. It read, "Kindness earns a trust that authority never can," dedicated to the caregivers whose quiet compassion changes lives every day, especially those who never seek recognition. Below the inscription was one small photograph, not of an award ceremony, not of a hospital director, not of a military commander. It showed a quiet nurse sitting on the grass beneath an old oak tree, surrounded by 5 peaceful military working dogs. Whenever visitors asked who the woman in the photograph was, the staff always smiled before giving the same answer. "Oh, that's Olivia, our quiet nurse." And somehow, that answer always seemed more than enough. Thank you for watching this story. If Olivia, Maverick, Kodiak, Echo, Scout, and Valor touched your heart, we'd love to know which of the 5 dogs you connected with the most, and why. Your stories and comments are what make this community so special. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and never underestimate the quiet kindness that can change a life.